Mel and Kim Kotur, and this is Rosie, and this is Maisie the puppy, who's always getting into the trouble with the flowers and the plants.
That's Maisie.
And we're on Arnica Drive in Bozeman, Montana. Well, this is my lucky greenhouse. It actually came free from the neighbors. They had built it, and they decided they didn't want it anymore, and it was out on the street and just right next door, and I brought it in. And it's actually been marvelous. I start my tomatoes in the house right after spring break, and then leave them in the house on under lights for a while. Then I bring them out here to harden them off, and you know, they've never had any problems when I put them in the ground. They've never wilted or looked stressed at all, because this greenhouse gives them enough light and just the right amount of wind exposure to get them firmed up, and they've done great. This greenhouse has also really helped a million times for times when we've gotten hail and things have not gotten hailed on because of the greenhouse. The greenhouse is broken from hail and we've repaired it several times. I keep my tomatoes in self-watering pots in the greenhouse as long as I can, and then when they get too big and they grow up to the top of the little greenhouse, then I will go ahead and put them down in this stairwell. So after the tomatoes have done pretty well in the house starting, I put them in the greenhouse in their little pots and they harden off. Then I put them in these self-watering containers that I've got hooked up to the drip system. I've got the hoses here hooked up with a little emitter that gives about 2 gallons an hour, and run it for half an hour, so I get 1 gallon a day into these pots, or sometimes a little more than that, and that will keep the pots all watered so we can go camping. Okay, well, this is my tomato bed. It's raised. We built it on the south side of the 2-story house, and there's a retaining wall on that side and this side, and it's sort of like its own little ecosystem. I bet it's probably 10 degrees warmer over here just about year-round. We have 1/4-inch steel hoops over it, and I have a fiber, a cloth insulated blanket that I got from Cashman's, and I put that over it and close the ends in the spring, so I can put my tomatoes in here probably early or mid-May, and they don't freeze, and they get a real nice early start. Okay, so this plant is called a ground cherry. Its genus is the same as a tomatillo, but the species is different. And as you can see, it has these little Japanese lantern type fruits on it, and you open up a fruit and they have a little yellow mini tomatillo type thing in there that's called a ground cherry. Those, my grandma grew them in Iowa when I was growing up, and she made the most tremendous ground cherry jam. She put lemon peel and lemon juice in with it, and I just loved it. And all my adult years, I had never seen another ground cherry, and then I found one at a greenhouse a few years back, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a ground cherry. And I bought them, and if you put some of the cherries in your compost, you'll have volunteers all over the place. So I've got ground cherries now, and I'm making ground cherry jam just like Grandma did, and it's just been tremendous. It tastes so good. Brings me back all these good sweet memories from my childhood. Scarlet runner beans. These are an amazing bean. Can you believe a bean that big is still good to eat? And it's nice and tender and very good eating. I've got a lot of those great big scarlet runner beans in here. I need to pick again. These beans are just a delight. They're an heirloom, and they really bring the hummingbirds. So they've been lots of fun with the hummingbirds coming to the scarlet runner beans. And gosh, look at this one. Look at that. It's amazing. Well, this is my show and tell. Okay, so this is one of the biggest tomatoes I ever grew, and these big ones like this, they all came off of the earth box down in the stairwell that is growing with the self-watering system. Then these little guys, these are 4th of July hybrid that are one of my favorites. In fact, there have been years that I have gotten a tomato on like about July 7th or 8th from the 4th of July bushes. Now, I love the Master Gardener program, but there's one thing that I do not agree with science on, and I'm quite a scientist. I love science. But I do think that if you start your tomatoes early in the house, that they will do better when you get them outside. This little gadget is a biodome. I got it from Parks Seed Company. Another Master Gardener told me about it. This has really been the ticket for me for starting tomatoes, or starting any plants in the house. I used to use Jiffy 7s, and I'd get damping off disease with them. And this is a hydroponic system. You put water down in here. First you bleach the whole thing so that it's not going to have any bacteria. These little guys are a little biodegradable sponge that you soak up and put in there. You put the seeds in there. I've had the best luck, really good germination, and no damping off disease with this. So I thought I'd just mention it because it's really made a difference. A little more about tomatoes. I like to roast my tomatoes. For one, I don't have a lot of freezer space, and I like to freeze them. And so I take these little guys and just cut them in half, put them on a pan like this, roast them in the oven, and get a full pan, probably throw in some basil and some garlic if I want to. It doesn't matter what temperature, whatever you're cooking your dinner with, but you get them roasted down until the juice is kind of syrupy and the tomatoes are sort of looking like they're sun-dried. And I can get a whole pan of tomatoes in about 2 of these little cartons for the freezer. And oh man, when you put that in your spaghetti sauce, ooh, you've got rich spaghetti sauce. So it's possible to make your own self-watering system, sort of like an earth box. What I have done, and there's different ways to do it. There's a lot of different directions online. I like this the best. This is a hydroponic basket that I got from Planet Natural. I cut off the top of it and finish cutting it off here like this. Then I put it down in the bucket and put a screen over it, and the soil sits on top of the screen. You put this pipe down in there to water it so that the water goes down into the water well and the soil sits on top. But you have these little places around the edges where you do have soil down into the water, and that will wick the water up into your plant. You put a hole in the bucket on the side of the bucket that's just below the level of the soil so that the soil doesn't get waterlogged, but you've got a nice water well there so that you don't have to be running out and watering your tomatoes 3 times a day. And then when you fill this, you need to fill it with a potting soil, not regular soil from the garden. And in the top inch, or the top 2 inches, you put about a cup of garden lime. That will keep your tomatoes from getting blossom end rot when they're in pots. Otherwise, the potting soil doesn't have enough calcium in it to keep your tomatoes from getting blossom end rot. And my tomatoes in this system don't get any blossom end rot because there's 2 things that'll cause blossom end rot. Not having enough lime because it's potting soil. Our regular soil in Montana does have enough lime. And the other thing is not having enough water all the time. And these tomatoes have water all the time, just the right amount that they need. We also put a circle around the plant of the 10-10-10 or 15-15-15, a balanced fertilizer, about a cup around this in a circle. And the plant comes up the middle. If you look online about self-watering systems, they say you need a plastic over the top, you know. I've never been able to put plastic over the top because when I put my tomatoes in here, I usually put them in early May, and they've already been growing since the end of March, and they're too big to put through any kind of a piece of plastic to cover it up, and they've worked fine without the plastic. But